This is episode 300. 300 conversations, 300 opportunities to rise, reflect, and yes, relaunch. I want to take you through the evolution of this podcast, the lessons learned along the way, and the guests who helped shape this movement. I also want to share what these 300 episodes have taught me about relaunching, about identity, about persistence, and about the work I do with women every single day. Let's talk about where it all began. Welcome to Relaunch to a Rich Life podcast. Wow, I am welcoming you because I would not be still sitting here if it weren't for you tuning in, listening weekly, because I got to tell you, I'm calling this a double pinch me moment right now. This is episode number 300 of the podcast, and it's releasing on all the days New Year's Eve, the most powerful day of the year for reflection, identity shifts, and massive relaunch decisions for the next year. It is, to me, what I call a pop the champagne moment, because as we say goodbye to 2025 and look ahead to 2026, this episode is all about who we are choosing to become next. 300 episodes, 300 conversations, 300 opportunities to rise, reflect, and yes, relaunch. Whether you've been with me since the very beginning, do you remember that first episode? Oh my God, I can still remember where I was sitting. I was in San Francisco in our apartment, and COVID had just started, the whole, pandemic. And I sat there and I remember I kept hearing, if you can get past eight episodes, you're in one of I think it was at the time the top 25% because podcast fade was such a big deal. And after the first episode, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to be able to do this? I remember, if you have not heard episode 1, you got to go back. It was so funny. I don't know why I decided to start with and I don't want to give away the goods, but let's just say it's a very intimate, and there is some very hysterical moments. And one of the things I said is that I wanted to always infuse into these episodes a little of Lucille Ball, who I have always loved. In fact, I was just her for Halloween this year. He was Ricky. And there's always this element of, I can't believe I did that. And that is an episode that I literally can't believe I did. But it was the beginning. And for those that have hung in there with me, I want to say thank you to you. You are part of a global community of people. And I get the statistics. I know where people are tuning in, and we are literally global. We are making an impact in so many different countries. And I also know that small talk is not why you're here. And transformation and helping to guide you into that best next version of you, your massive identity shift. That's why we keep doing what we're doing. And you're here for growth. You've often heard me say, and I talk about the G zone, your growth zone, your gratitude zone, your great zone. It's when you're in your flow zone. And you're also here to create a rich life from the inside out, rich in wealth, rich in health, rich in relationships. And today, I want to take you through the evolution of this podcast, the lessons learned along the way, and the guests who helped shape this movement. I also want to share what these 300 episodes have taught me about relaunching, about identity, about persistence, and about the work I do with women every single day. It's the world I call 3HQ. So many of you know it. It's the head, the heart, the highest self, your HQ of yourself, your headquarters. But let's talk about where it all began. April 28th, 2020. I remember the exact day this journey started. I remember literally, I could shut my eyes right now and I can feel the uncertainty of that time. And all of us were trying so desperately to navigate what not only is personal relaunches, professional relaunches, but global relaunches. And this one, we had absolutely no choice. And the first episode didn't launch. We actually changed the name. We've changed it, I think now 3 times. The first one I called the Silver Lined Relaunch. And I wanted to talk about the simple part of help people find silver linings in the middle of chaos. Help people find that thread of hope that they could hold on to. Help people rediscover what their center is. But something really interesting started to happen. As the stories deepened, the conversations became more intentional. The transformations became bigger. The show grew beyond just the silver linings. It began to reflect something deep within all of us. So the podcast evolved into its second name, the Relaunch Podcast. That name carried us through a powerful season of growth, stories of reinvention, resilience, courageous decisions to choose a new direction. And eventually, as my work evolved, as 3HQ expanded, and as the mission became even clearer, the podcast evolved one more time into what you know it today, which is Relaunch to a Rich Life. Because relaunching is not just about bouncing back. It's about rising into something richer in meaning, richer in alignment, richer in identity. And I often think about something Seth Godin shared with me when he came on the show. He actually reminded us that waiting for everything to be perfect is the fastest way to guarantee you never start. That first episode in 2020 was far from perfect, but it was the beginning of this movement. And there is something to be said about showing up, about being committed to you. I wanted to make sure that if I did this, I was now committing every single week to producing an episode. And for 4 years, I mean, it's a promise. I mean, it had to happen. You know, there wasn't well, maybe not this week. No, it was something that as I was developing this, and shout out to Michelle Abraham. Oh my gosh. I called her up about a month before the podcast started, and I said, I want to do something really crazy. I want to launch a podcast in less than 30 days. I want you to share with me everything that you know about podcasting, which she had a business around amplify your voice and podcasting and getting your podcast out there. And I said, I want to actually have this be available to everyone. And I brought in every single expert that I could get my hands on, that I was like, come on, can you help me? Can you? And every morning I would go live on Facebook and I would share 10, 15 minutes of what I was going to be doing that day. I'd give worksheets. I'd do all of this. I'd talk about the equipment I was going to use. And these experts gave me all this great advice. And I believe it was like 23 days later, we launched. And here's the thing. That day, when I hit that, live button that we're doing this, it was a promise. And like any promise worth keeping, it has tested me. It's required that consistency. It's required discipline. And yeah, you got to come up with, new ways. Here's the thing, new ways of getting things out of people even when they're, buttoned up, they didn't want to really talk. They've never, how many do you remember hearing where they've said to me, this is the first time I've ever shared this, right? Wow. I mean, there were weeks when technology, when blackouts occurred, when weeks when, travels, I had to shift things around. I was on stages and I had to get off and record. Guests had to reschedule. I mean, you name it. And there was always that moment that, I could just not do it. Or how many episodes do you have to have? And maybe, is it still working? And then I'd get an email, or I'd get a DM, or I'd hear somebody at an event and they would say, "Oh my God, what you said changed my life." And that is why every episode had to go out. Not because it was easy, but because it was important. It was impactful. And this podcast became almost a weekly anchor for me and for this ever-growing community. Simon Sinek said something during our conversation that stayed with me. He said that purpose requires consistency, not intensity. The infinite game isn't won through one massive moment. It's won through devotion, through staying in the arena. And that's why this podcast is still here. Not because every week was perfect, not because every single show was, that A+ show, but because every week, when I sat down, I tuned in right before it with the intention to have somebody hear something that they needed to hear. And so let me just say, 300 episodes, they definitely show you patterns. They show you truth. They show you what people really need to transform. And I'm going to give you a few of my truth bombs right now, okay? Truth number 1, every relaunch begins internally. People think reinvention happens when circumstances change. No, it actually begins when identity shifts, when you tune in, when you hear the whisper that says, it's time for more. That's the most important thing. Truth number 2, you need a framework to transform sustainably. This is why I created 3HQ, Head, Heart, Highest Self. Highest Self, best version of you. When women come to me, overwhelmed, stressed, disconnected, frustrated, even a little frozen, 3HQ is what brings them back into alignment. It helps them clear their bugs, their beliefs underground, the surface, beliefs underground surfacing. And it also helps with those unconscious blocks. So we got limiting beliefs, we've got unconscious blocks. It helps with their old patterns, their old stories, so that they can step into who they truly are. And then another one, truth number 3, a relaunch, it's not a moment. It's a practice. It's the act of showing up again and again, even when the early attempts feel awkward, uncomfortable, or uncertain. I mean, this podcast has been a living, breathing example of that truth. And I got to tell you, I've learned a lot about what makes a good show and what doesn't. And what are the things you must do when you, in fact, that should be a different episode. What should you absolutely do when you go on somebody's podcast to make it the best it can be? Well, one thing I want to do right now is 5 guests who shaped the show. And here's the thing. It's really, it's 300 guests. It's every one. And you can tell when I'm interviewing people, I just get so into their story. And you also know that every time, either on camera or off, I always say, if you could go back and change how things turned out, how things happened, would you? Not one has said, if I could go back and change that awful situation, I would. And I have to say, after my own Somebody asked me, how many relaunches do you think you have? I mean, I think I was up to like almost 30. There's been so many, and they keep coming, right? Because that's life. They just keep happening. But, when you start thinking about all the things that could potentially keep you down and how you have the ability to rise, to keep moving. Sometimes just having the ability to hear somebody else's story about how they did it helps you believe. It's that good old word, believe, that things can actually happen. And if they can happen for somebody else, they can happen for you. And I'm not saying with my mom's passing or my divorce or melanoma or my grandparents dying in their car crash or the numerous people I've lost in my immediate family to drugs and just awful situations. I'm not saying that it doesn't have an impact on me anymore, that I've just relaunched through it. No, I still can go back and I can still appreciate how far I've come, how much I've grown. But I've been able to keep going because of relaunch, the relaunch effect I talk about, having one effect in one area and it trickles out to the others, having the what happens with the tools that we use, the E factor in your energy and raising your vibrational energy to your goals and your accomplishments. I mean, this is how I get by. This is how I get by every single day. This is how I coach clients who are going through some of the hardest things and the best things in their life. Relaunches, we always think, have to be like, oh my God, these massive, horrible things. No, a relaunch can be deciding to make a big step in a new direction. It could be deciding that you're finally going to find love, deciding that you're going to, finally put your health first, and then having the ability to create the habits that are going to get you there. I often talk about the 7+ figure identity and how do you actually get in and create an identity for success, for midlife success, right? I go back to Brene Brown and how she says midlife is 35 until you're dead. Come on, if that's the case. Wow, how many of us are in the heat of it right now? And so we have to be making the most of where we are in this journey, the most of the relaunches. And I'll never forget Marie Diamond coming on. And some of these have just come on recently, and it's just, these are the top of mind. But my gosh, there's probably 295 others that I'm not going to name that equally made an impact. And so Marie helped us understand that our environment, it's not just passively sitting there. Your physical space communicates with your energy field. It supports you, but it can also derail your intentions. And she taught listeners how to create surroundings that elevate them into their highest identity. And this mirrors the head, the heart, the highest self inside 3HQ. A lot of people have a really difficult time kind of getting in and visualizing what that future self would even be. That's where Relaunch steps in. She kind of brought it all together with what we're doing here at Relaunch and what she's doing in her world of vision boards for the house. That's her book. And then Amelia Antonetti. Amelia brought a powerful level of honesty, clarity. She taught us that transformation, it's not accidental. You must understand your own patterns. You got to take ownership of your choices. You got to develop the discipline to shift. Her approach aligns perfectly with the head level of 3HQ. Understanding, you got to be noticing, consciously choosing, right? And then what about Christy Whitman? Christy helped listeners see the energetic foundation of every choice, belief, outcome. She taught us about emotional alignment, about being responsible for the energy you bring into every space. You've all been in a room where you're like, uh-oh, How do I get out of here as fast as possible? Her message deepened the emotional intelligence and heart work. Our community thrives on this. I mentioned Seth, I mentioned Simon. I mean, these podcasts all deliver not only hearing what the relaunch, the significant relaunch in their life was, but now where are they? And for many of them, some of them are going through massive relaunches right now, right? And so one of the unexpected gifts that I have to say of this podcast is how deeply it connects to actually the work I do with my own clients. And inside the 3HQ, inside our programs, inside the relaunch and flip your world and getting more tuned in, women discover that what they've been unable to access on their own. There might be clarity. My God, that is so important. Every single podcast, I try to get to that clarity. And I always am like just hammering it into how are you getting clear around your identity, right? Then there's also this need for courage to close old chapters, alignment with purpose, confidence. God, you have to have the confidence to actually step into a rich life. Every episode reflects that same evolution. So many listeners have actually said, Hilary, I heard an episode at exactly the right moment I needed it. You were speaking to me. Well, that's the beauty of relaunching. You don't always know when that shift is coming, but when the tools show up, when the voice comes at you, everything inside you wakes up. I've watched women step out of this feeling of being stuck and I don't know if now's the right time. My God, can I tell you, as I held my mom's hand as she took her last breath, now is the right time. Step out of your fear. Fear is that thing in the future that hasn't even happened yet. Step out of hiding. Step into the future you. This show actually gives you the spark. And the work we do together creates ignition. It's like in my first book, Relaunch, Spark Your Heart, to ignite your life. Can we please, in this next phase of our life, ignite the hell out of it? Come on. Because that's why this podcast exists, not to entertain you. I want to activate you. So what comes next? What comes next after 300 episodes? Definitely more identity work, more 3HQ, more neuroscience, more rich life principles. But here's the thing. We've also heard you want more of this, of these conversations, of the ones that matter, the ones where I do share more of what I'm seeing successfully work with women. We're going to continue to bring real stories. We're going to continue with those real conversations. And I commit to you to also go with real tools that help you transform, because you deserve a life that actually feels aligned. I mean, it lights you up. That La Dolce Vita, like, oh God, bring me more of that. I want you to have a rich life. However you're going to define rich. And I got to tell you, we are just getting started. We are going to be planning so many new, incredible opportunities for you to engage. And so as we celebrate 300 episodes, close out 2025, I want to leave you with this. Your next relaunch isn't waiting for the clock to strike midnight. It's waiting for you to decide. And as you step into 2026, choose the identity that you want to live from. Choose the version of you who is aligned, courageous, expanded, and ready for her rich life. Choose the woman who doesn't just make resolutions. She makes decisions. She commits to being done. I'm done. So tonight, as the world counts down, I want you to take a breath. Tune in and say yes to the version of you you've been dreaming about. Because we grow, we evolve, we relaunch, ready, set, relaunch. And 2026 is your year to rise. Happy New Year, everyone. Pop the champagne, pop the Perrier, pop everything. And thank you for celebrating episode 300 with me. Please share this with everyone that you know needs to relaunch and rise up in 2026.